funnily enough, we're having problems with the technology. So if anyone knows where the USB is for the clicker or find it in your possession, let us know. Right to go, guys? Yep, thank you. Welcome to the special meeting for the Toowoomba Regional Council for the 4th of May 2022. This meeting is open to the public and also will be live streamed. I'd like to thank those of you in the room today and acknowledge everyone watching via Council social media channels. I acknowledge the Mayor is not here at the moment. Portfolio Leader, Councillor Carl, Councillors, Acting CEO Mike Brady, General Manager Stuart Summers, and the Planning and Development Group. I acknowledge the Aboriginal parties whose songlines traverse these lands we meet on today, the Western Waka Waka, Guyabal and Jarrawa peoples, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the knowledge, the rich tradition and bold ambitions of Australia's First Peoples. Our apologies. Councillor Antonio may be an apology, but we might just wait and see whether he does come. We have a leave of absence from Councillor Melissa Taylor. There's no other wishes for leave of absence. Item number 3 is the confirmation of the previous minutes. Can I have someone move that they be accepted? Councillor Taylor, Councillor McDonald, all those in favour? It's carried. Are there any business arising from the previous minutes? No. Okay. Can I have someone move that we suspend standing orders? Councillor McDonald, Councillor Shine, all those in favour? It's carried. Item number 6, councillors, is the material change of use for 16 Forest Street. And we have a first-time presenter today, Katrina Christensen. So please, well, I won't say make her welcome, but yes. Make her welcome. Councillor Bonhoff.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to, before we start, and sorry to interrupt, on the one, wherever the page is, on the list of submitters, there's a Rosalind Bonhoff, and I just wanted to flag that she's not a direct relative of mine.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bonhoff. Okay, Katrina.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Could we start on attachment 3 if possible, please?
You have to get nice and close to the microphone too.
Yep. Okay, so I'll kick off while we're waiting for that one. Working? Closer. Okay.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Chair, councillors, council officers and the public in attendance today. This application seeks an impact assessable development permit for a material change of use being a multiple dwelling. So it'll be 4 2-bedroom units located on the subject site, which is 16 Forest Street at Pittsworth. So it's known as Lot 1 on SP 230423, if anyone was wondering. The subject site has a site area of 801 square metres and is located within community facility zones. It's in the government precinct of the Toowoomba Regional Council Planning Scheme 2012. So the subject site is located on a reasonably sized corner lot. It has a frontage of 15.5 metres to Forest Street and a significant frontage of 38 metres to Grand Street. So it's the one highlighted in red up there on the screen. The site is located directly to the north of the existing Lutheran Church of Australia. So that's the one directly underneath with the frontage to Grand Street and Hagley Street. So it's also adjacent to the Merv and John Hart Park. So you can see the park opposite there. It's got a lovely playground, some sitting areas, trees. It's quite a nice area. Further to the site, it's located approximately a 6-minute walk, being approximately 450 metres to Yandilla Street, which contains the existing IGA, medical centre, and in addition to numerous surrounding shops and services, including the civic pool. So you can see it's just down Grand, Hagley and Short, and it's just off the screen down on the bottom to the right there. The site is well located to all essential services for residents of Pittsworth. The subject site leads into the low-medium density residential zone, which includes an array of housing options, however is limited with no small-scale, low-maintenance options which have been identified with such proximity to the surrounding essential services. The country town of Pittsworth offers a relaxed lifestyle whilst remaining a reasonable distance from Pittsworth Centre, offering living options to a large demographic of residents. The applicant has identified that the development will be targeted at occupants of an older age bracket due to the development being designed as affordable, low maintenance and secure, whilst within a walking distance to recreation and community facilities and services. The development proposes a new residential living option for Pittsworth residents that necessarily does not require the same level of maintenance and upkeep as an individual residential dwelling on a freehold lot. If we can go to attachment 2, please. So the site was originally part of the adjoining land to the east, which contains the church and ancillary outbuildings. So that'll be the one below with the G in the yellow square directly below. Yep. A 2 into 5 lot subdivision was approved on the 6th of November 2009, and the survey plan was signed in 2010 for a subdivision, resulting in the creation of the subject lot. Despite no longer being part of the church grounds, the subject lot and part of the eastern adjoining lot 9, so you can see the one directly to the east is half pink, half yellow to the subject site. So that lot there also maintained part of the original community facilities and zoning. So we've consulted with Council's Strategic Planning and Economic Development Branch, and they've identified that the subject site has not intentionally been maintained at that zoning for the community use, and the appropriate zone designation will be considered as part of the new planning scheme that's currently being drafted. In this regard, it is noted that where located in the adjoining low-medium density zone, the proposed multiple dwelling development would have been code accessible and directly meet the purpose and overall outcome sought by the zone code. However, due to the site having not been rezoned during the previous subdivision and maintaining the community facilities zoning, the proposed development requires impact assessment, despite being consistent with the predominant residential character of the area and further complementing housing diversity within the locality. The development is neither identified as being consistent or inconsistent with the community facility zone, however, it is noted to be consistent with the surrounding low-medium density residential zone. If we can go to attachment 6, please. The subject site has remained vacant since the lot was originally created and has recently benefited from the construction of a new footpath within the road reserve along Grand Street frontage. The application seeks to allow the construction of a multiple dwelling, which is the 4 units with 2 bedrooms, within the subject site to establish a broader range of residential living options within the neighbourhood. Each of the attached single-storey units includes 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, kitchen, meals living area, single garage and laundry. The main bedroom to proposed unit 1 also includes an ensuite and walk-in robe. So you can see that up there on the screen being the floor plan demonstrating all those rooms. As the site is a corner lot, the units have been designed to provide... Sorry, where am I reading? Yeah, so being a corner lot, the units have been designed to provide Unit 1 with a direct frontage to Forest Street, so that's the one in the top corner on the far side. Yep, so that's Unit 1. And the Units 2 to 4 will front Grand Street, so the 3 along the bottom will front down to Grand. The second parking space for each of the units is provided on the driveway area in front of each unit's garage in a tandem arrangement. Attachment 5, please. So it is noted that the development seeks an increased site coverage by 5.2% above the prescribed within that of its acceptable outcome A04 of the medium density residential code. So it results in a total site coverage of 55.2%. However, it is considered to meet the outcome sought by the respective performance outcome P04 of the medium density residential code. The increased site coverage is considered to maintain an appropriate residential built form and scale on the site and contribute to the existing streetscape. As noted previously, the proposed development proposes 1 garage car parking space and 1 tandem driveway car parking space per unit, providing a total of 8 on-site car parks, being 2 per unit. The applicant has provided a traffic assessment which identifies the proposed car parking and vehicle manoeuvring to be adequate for the site and in accordance with the standards of AS 2890.1. The applicant has identified that the development maintains adequate road frontage and width to facilitate on-street visitor parking as required. It is noted that only 1 visitor space is required under the planning scheme. Street parking is available for visitor parking, which meets the performance outcome in PO9 by not adversely impacting upon the safety or capacity of the road network or unduly impacting on local amenity. Attachment 7, please. The application was publicly notified with a total of 37 submissions being received, comprising 35 being properly made and 2 not properly made. All these submissions were in objection to the proposed development. The matters raised and the assessing officer's response to these matters are detailed within the report provided here. The proposed development has been assessed against all relevant assessment benchmarks, including the entire planning scheme to the extent relevant, and the State Planning Policy 2017. The proposed development generally complies with the outcomes sought in the planning scheme, and therefore the proposed development is recommended to be approved subject to reasonable and relevant conditions. So the submissions that were received were predominantly concerned about the car parking and number of cars that would be traversing the street. There was some concerns about the density of the building and the size of the units as to whether they would suit the general four-person family that are in the area, but obviously, as addressed, it's not. It's to provide more range to housing options. So there was that option there. Traffic and noise to the small neighbourhood, that's all been assessed. I'm happy to answer questions when needed. There's more concerns about young children on the street, if there'd be more vehicles and how the incident rates would increase or anything like that, which is also addressed within the report. We looked at that closely and assessed that there shouldn't be too many concerns if obviously road rules were obeyed. Concerns about the new footpath that was installed. So we aren't proposing, the application doesn't propose to move that, damage that or impede that in any way. There was some concerns about the value of the surrounding properties and the maintenance of the current block. Those aren't considered under the planning scheme, so they're not relevant considerations when assessing the application. And I believe there were also some concerns about some of the utilities and buildings shown on the adjoining sites. These have been addressed and amended on the plans. And that's probably about a summary of all the submissions that were received.
Well done, Katrina. Any questions for the officer? Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Katrina, attachment 5 of 8, the site plan.
Yep.
I presume, may be wrong, but the front unit there abuts the northern, or that'd be an eastern, but the northern side, the top side of the front unit, showing the bedroom and ensuite. It's on the boundary. I was looking in the report. Is there a relaxation required from council in order to do that, or is that permitted to be on the boundary for so
So, councillor through the chair, there may be a QDC relaxation required under a building works approval. Under the planning scheme, they're allowed to have a built-to-boundary wall there. That's part of an acceptable outcome. It's also noted that that Unit 1 area adjoins the adjoining carport and garage of that northern house there. The remainder of the setbacks there complies with the planning scheme.
Yeah, no, I just had a query about that front section, and considering it's a bathroom window up against the existing residence.
Yep. I don't actually believe, sorry, in Unit 1, I don't actually believe there are windows proposed there. That's a built-to-boundary wall. So I think on the adjoining garage, on that adjoining lot, there is some windows in that garage, but that built-to-boundary wall section there doesn't have any windows.
The one towards the back is the walk-in road, the ensuite. The toilet and shower shows a window fronting the street there.
Fronting-
In attachment, in the floor plan attachment 6.
So are you referring to Unit 1, the one that
Yeah.
fronts Forest Street?
Yeah, that's the one. Yep.
So that window fronts the Forest Street frontage, so it won't directly
Yeah,
front the adjoining dwelling.
Yeah, I've seen that. No, and that'll be a normal process under the building regs that they'll have to apply for a relaxation onto the boundary.
It should be, I'm a planner, sorry, not a building.
Under the building regulations,
Yeah.
councillor,
Yeah.
it would need a relaxation, not under planning.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean, under the building, that's what I said, under the building regs. I'll have to get that. That's my only question. Thank you.
Councillor McMahon.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Katrina, you did well. Just wondering, in that joint driveway in Units 3 and Floor 4, a tree to be removed. It's only one, yeah, okay, but I don't have any landscaping proposals in detail. I suppose there's some basics there. Is there any plans to substitute it, put it back, change it around, anything like that?
So councillor through the chair, are you referring to the street tree or trees on site?
It says, I'm in attachment 5, in the driveway, existing tree to be removed. There's a circle right there where the mouse pointer is.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so that one is a street tree. I have spoken to our parks team. They are of the opinion that it's quite small and not of a great stature for a tree. They are happy for that one to be removed, and there has been conditioning to provide, I think, 2 to 3 additional street trees along that frontage. So it will be replaced with suitable trees.
Okay, so that conditioning is in this development, not reflected necessarily on that, on attachment 5?
Yeah, no, so that will be within the conditions of the special meeting of council report that you would have received.
Thank you.
Can we just get where that is? Sorry, I couldn't see it either.
88,
Condition 88.
thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor McDonald?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Katrina, thank you very much. Just in regard to the car parking, there's the single lock-up and then the car parking available in the driveway. Is that an unusual situation to this particular development, or has this happened elsewhere?
So, councillor through the chair, it's quite a reasonable thing that I've seen quite often. It's actually within the planning scheme outcomes, they sort of seek it. It's more common on smaller lots where you do have denser options, but I was talking to our engineer this morning and there's a couple of options like this around. It's not something that's never seen per se.
Thank you.
Councillor Summerfield?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. I just wanted to talk about the site cover, the 55.2. Could you help me understand how it's okay to have 55.2 when the planning scheme says 50%? And that's something we've talked about here in the chamber around actually even considering increasing or decreasing, I should say, the amount of site cover to ensure, because 50% on an average size block just means a metre all the way around the outside of a development. So it's very little land at all, really, that's not covered by site. So I just wonder if you could help me understand why it's okay to put 55.2 instead of the 50 that we have in our planning scheme to adhere to.
Yep, so councillor through the chair. So that one's in relation to the medium density residential code. So I believe acceptable outcome and performance outcome 4 of that code, table 9372, is applicable there. So it states site cover which does not exceed the specified table, which is 50% for this outcome. However, we also have the performance outcome there, which supplies additional ones. Because we're in a performance outcome scheme, we can comply with that PO there. So those items were for on-site filtration of stormwater, which has been addressed, minimises the visual impact and hard surface areas. So on the front there, you can see really the only area you have of hard surface is your driveways. Everything else in those areas is proposed to be vegetated. You've also got respects the existing and preferred neighbourhood character and the features of the site. So once again, there's a lot of landscaping there. You have your crossovers, which is generally 1 to Forest Street, 2 to Grand. So on that consideration, and then it backs 2 side boundaries there. So the minor increase to that site area, I'm sorry, I don't know the metres squared, but it's not considered to be too substantial for the site. It's still considered to maintain that streetscape and the overall appearance and look of the site without any damaging effects, I guess.
Thank you. Follow up if I could. So allowing for what you've just explained, it still means that it's only 44.8% that's exposed, isn't it? Even with that explanation, it's still under the 50% that's left exposed to absorbing water and growing plants and all that sort of thing. Is that right?
So, councillor through the chair, that's the first one of the performance outcome. So that would be 44.8, 44.9, that'd be about close. There has been significant aspects on site though to manage any stormwater that's on the site.
I might just pick up. Once again, planning is not a regulatory function in the sense that we are dealing in black and white. As I've said before, it's in areas of grey. And we're looking at what we're achieving here, and for particular reasons related to the characteristics of this site, it's been deemed that it does satisfy the requirements of the PO in particular, even though the AO, it offends the AO in a minor way, but it does achieve the PO. And that's the reason why you have a PO and an AO, so that if in fact you have a reasonably good development, but it does offend 1 or 2 AOs, you go then to the POs to see that it's in line with the overall thrust of the scheme. This is an impact assessment application, and it does, because it's impact, it does particularly have the whole of the scheme. The requirement is that you apply the whole of the scheme to the assessment of this application. So, yeah, it's not a regulation. It's not a drop dead if you don't achieve it. Building regulations, yes, because you can have drop dead situations if you're wrong. And engineering, building bridges and what have you, of course that's black and white. But planning, we're dealing with trying to achieve the best outcome for a site that's possible. And it doesn't always exactly comply with the AOs within the scheme, as we've discussed before. So,
Councillor McMahon.
Thanks, Chair. Another question. So over with Unit 1, that ensuite and walk-in robe that is right on the boundary fence there, is there currently a fence in between that and the existing house? And is there an issue with using the side of your ensuite as a fence? When I was involved in building a house, you had to have 600 from the fence, and now we're going right up to the fence, and that ensuite is forming part of the fence. So is there a fence? Will there be? And is that appropriate to do this way?
So, councillor through the chair, there is an existing fence there along that boundary. It should be a 1.8, I believe, under 1.8 or 1.6. There is also conditioning that a 1.8 fence will be provided the whole way around. So the building of that built boundary will be against that fence. There will be an existing fence.
Yeah, right. And it's appropriate to use an ensuite as, like, right up to the boundary like that?
So a built boundary wall can be any part of the house. It's more specific for inhabitable areas though. So an ensuite is considered appropriate for that sort of setback.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the officer? Thanks, Katrina. We have a submitter, Mr. Stephen Johnson, if you'd like to come up and have your 5 minutes.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chair and councillors. As I said, I'm Stephen David Johnson. My wife and I live at 12 Forest Street, Pittsworth. I'm also representing virtually all the other applicants for the objection. Due to the unfortunate time frames we were given to attend this meeting, I was the only one who was able to change their work around to get here. But first, thank you for listening to me and our neighbourhood concerns. I really can't overstate the stress this development is placing on our neighbourhood. We are not against development. In fact, we would love to see more opportunities for families to join our wonderful community. But it has to be the right development. We are not Brisbane or a larger regional town. We're a small country regional area. Most of us who chose to live here moved here because it's a country town with a relaxed feel. We are also not saying there is no place for units in Pittsworth, but there is land that can be developed with units in Pittsworth that are more appropriate. Example, Margetts, Stoney and Wheel Street have blocks there ready for development and would be more appropriate. Grand Street is not appropriate, even if it does fit in with your clinical definitions. Every one of us that has bought and built in that neighbourhood did so for reasons, because it was all houses, not units, mostly families, owner-occupiers. In fact, in those 2 streets, there are only 3 renters. It is quite a beautiful and serene place to live, and with reasonable sized yards for kids to play. It is also close to town, as example, and has a lovely park. The only other structure is a church, which fits in with the area and the design of the area. Everyone but this developer seems to care for our neighbourhood. We are friendly and we keep our properties tidy and presentable. If you've ever been out there, you'll see that. Our concern is, and I don't know how any argument can justify the development, when the council's own development plan states that the development should fit in with the surrounding area and types of build. I don't see how anyone can possibly say a 4-unit building fits in with only single dwelling houses. There's not even a duplex there, let alone 4-bedroom units. But anyway, which is why the area is low density. The fact that one single block has to be changed for the zone to allow it should tell you everything you need to know, and I think is argument enough without all the others. Yes, traffic and parking are going to be an issue regardless of what the team has decided. These units are so small, it is very unlikely any families will be moving in there, and most likely will be attracting shared habitation. I'm not against that, but there is no real room for multiple off-street parking. If you look at our street, you'll be lucky to see more than a couple of cars from the owners parked in the street, which also keeps to the look of the place. Last Sunday, the park had a birthday party, which is quite regular, and the church was also in service. The streets were full. Grand, Hadley, and even half of Forest Street were full of cars. Imagining adding more cars to that. As mentioned, this developer appears to have no concern or community spirit as shown by their lack of care of the block. I think I've sent photos. I could show you, it's even worse today, the actual care of that block. Our fear is if he builds that and takes about as much care as he does now, we're just going to have weeds growing through there, multiple cars and a block of units. Because he certainly hasn't shown any care so far, and it's been now owned for a while. I understand about trying to make money, as this developer will be making more money with 4 residents instead of 1 on a single block, as council will also be making more money from 4 residents other than a single building. The rest of us potentially could lose money, and that's just a reality. If you drive down that street and see a block of units and it's overgrown, I'm not saying it will be overgrown, but I'm just going off the developer's current care of the block. You're certainly not going to want to buy there. I wouldn't. I would keep driving. So we could lose money. Some of us concerns may be emotional, but humans are emotional creatures. Councils are service to the community and should always do what's best interest of the community, not just follow regulations. We have placed you in the care and charge of this area. The development is not in the best interest of our community. If this development proceeds to the next stage, we are planning holding a town meeting and exploring what other actions can be taken. We are totally committed to stopping this development. I will be contacting all councillors and mayor and asking them for a commitment to at least attend the meeting. I hope this committee can see not just the emotion, but the logic in our objections. I do reiterate that there really only needs to be one point considered. The town plan does not fit with this. It might in some sort of restrictive way, but it's all single houses. I don't see how you can say it's okay to put units there. Anyway, I implore you to do the right thing for the community and not just, as I said, follow regulations. Thank you.
Well done, Stephen. Questions for the submitter? Stephen, you might just stay here for a second, yeah. Councillor O'Shea?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mr. Johnson. I just want to understand, you mentioned that this area isn't appropriate, but you think there's other areas within Pittsworth which are appropriate. What's your reasoning for that, may I ask?
Well, there's a big, huge vacant lands in Margate Street that's been sold. There's virtually no development it's on the outskirts of town. So if you built high density there, it wouldn't really impact on anyone. There's another one near the cemetery, which is Stoney Street. That was actually up for development years ago. I don't know what happened to it. It stopped and it's just now a vacant block. It's quite a large block, quite easily could be developed again into multiple units. Again, would fit within, the look of the area. And also Steel Street. There was another one that the sign went up for development. Again, I don't know what happened. It doesn't seem to have ever gone through. But again, it's on the outskirts of town. There's just paddocks behind it. You build units there, you're not going to impact on anyone. As you can see there, there's not one. It's all single houses with families. I just don't understand it. The fact that you have to change the zone. As I said, I don't see how there's any other argument other than that, to be honest. I mean, I don't see how you can say it fits the area. It certainly doesn't.
Question answered, Councillor
Thank you.
O'Shea. Any other questions for Stephen? Councillor Shine.
No, thanks, Mr. Johnson. Just wondering if you could indicate how close those premises are to local services, shopping and so on.
Oh, very close, Councillor. That's one we loved. It's a beautiful street. If you've ever been down there, if you haven't, go have a look. And as you can see there, it's a short walk. There's actually a walkway across the railway line there where it says, sorry, I can't read that from here, but there's the railway line. There's actually a walking track there, and you literally a minute into town. It's fantastic, yeah. But you probably can't really tell that there's no units there, but there's not even a duplex. And you've got the park across the road, the church, and as I said, our real big concern too is that look, but also just the fact that we have a developer who clearly has no concern for our neighbourhood. You just have to look how the block is kept. Well, it's not really kept at all, to see that. So there are two big, it's not just the traffic, but yes, I'll provide garages, but I can tell you, I was going to actually take some photos of other units in town where no one uses the garages, they just park in the street. So even though you can say as long as people behave the rules and follow the road rules, people don't. So,
Any other questions
yeah.
for Stephen? No? Thanks very much, Stephen.
No worries.
Well
Thank
done.
you very much.
Okay. Now, we do have the applicant here. Did you, Councillor Carl?
I just want a question to the officer, for clarification.
All right.
On the zoned area and the areas as mentioned here, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a mixed area for residential with low to medium density, it's designated, and this block and a half is in fact an oversight of a carryover of a previous subdivision. So in fact it is permissible for this type of development in this area.
So, Councillor, through the chair. At this stage, or during the subdivision, there was intentions to rezone it so it could be used for a similar use. I believe the applicant who was doing that may have run out of money and didn't follow through with that. But I have spoken to our strategic planners and all that, and they have said that they will be likely to rezone it as well.
Sorry, Kirsten, could you go to I think it's attachment 2, please? That's the zoning map. So, councillors, you can see here the zoning map, and obviously the subject site's identified there as that yellow blob above the G, as Katrina pointed out earlier. If you look surrounding it, all of that pink is land that is currently zoned low, medium density residential, which is
Thanks.
exactly where Council's planning scheme identifies as land being suitable for this type of development. And as you indicated, Councillor Carl, it's just a matter of history that, you know, that large yellow parcel was historically part of the whole church holding, and they've subsequently determined that there is land superfluous to that, so they have subdivided that off, and obviously the zoning of that land hasn't caught up. As Katrina indicated, it will probably be addressed in our next new planning scheme, and if you look at it logically, what's it likely probably to be zoned? You'd guess the same as that whole myriad of land around it, which will be low, medium density residential.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that.
Councillor Carol Taylor, did you have a
Thank you,
question for the
Madam Chair.
officer?
Look, I, through you to Katrina, thank you, Katrina. I am not I'm not happy with the separation distance from the setback with that what looks like an obviously reasonably large house that's next door to the proposed building, and it's very close to the actual house itself. You say it's a carport, but I'm having trouble working out where it is, and then looking at the elevations, there'll be windows overlooking that house and that backyard. Now, you can't stop windows from overlooking a backyard, and that part has the site separation, as I think it does, but that top one doesn't, and I'm not really comfortable with that, being so close to an existing residence.
Yep, so Councillor through the chair. So it meets the applicable setbacks within our scheme. Their garage does come back to just before the end of Unit 2 there, and the existing adjoining residence does actually step back away from the fence as well. So not only will they have a 1.8 metre high fence, there will be landscaping. I note the setback isn't shown underneath the roof plan, but there is a setback there. So there will be an increased setback as well as the landscaping shown and the fence for separation.
So the way it's shown here on attachment 4, it doesn't show that the house steps back from the fence at all. And what would be the setback that you're talking about? Because it looks pretty skinny to me. If you have a look at aerial photo attachment 4 of 8, and this is the sticking point for me. I wouldn't like to be anywhere and have a house and then have something that's just so close to me. If you could, with your pen, I suppose we haven't got a pointer, if you could indicate to me where the carport is and where Unit 1 is it, one, I think, where it comes to, I would be grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, so I, may I?
Perhaps, do you want to use Katrina?
Yeah,
Kirsten,
that'll be
thank you very much
easier.
on that, yeah.
Madam Chair, the next attachment clearly shows, as a site plan, the setback and the position of the buildings.
So Katrina, do you want to indicate where the
Attachment 5 of 8,
garage carport of the house,
in fact, a
Goes
property
to?
boundary.
the right one?
Yes, but it doesn't tell me where the carport is, councillor Carl.
So it goes to that point,
Sorry, two.
where that line is. So you'll see basically the entirety of Unit 1, and that reduced boundary setback is against what is it, a garage wall or a carport wall? Garage wall. And then, as Katrina was indicating, Units 2, 3 and
Yes.
4 then step back further into the site.
And you can see that, so thank you very much. That's good clarification, thank you.
Councillor Vonhoff?
Thanks, Madam Chair, through you. Katrina, that 1.8 metre fence that runs along the, it runs the entire perimeter actually, around the northeast and then the southeast, I suppose it is. That northeast fence, I'm wondering about the shading effect on the patios of apartments 2, 3 and 4. If you've got a 1.8 metre fence and sun coming up in the east and the north being ahead of them, I can't see it in here, any consideration to the shading effect, and was there a report done into that or any comment on that consideration, please?
Yep, so councillor through the chair. That was assessed by our architect in our heritage and regional architecture advice team. There is on that plan in the northeastern corner, there is a sundial shown as to where the shading will go. There may be a little bit of overshading, but our architects have identified that it should be fine.
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I missed it. There may be a bit of what?
There may be a portion of shading probably towards the late afternoon when the sun does start to set, but there should still be enough daylight to be adequately used.
Sorry, I'm just trying to clarify the question. I mean, every property basically in Australia, it's as Australian as meat pies and Collingwood Football Club. 5'5" or that sort of fencing around Australian residential lots, they're part and parcel of residential lots, and they do cast a shade. And that's one of the discussion points often in terms of shadowing or overshadowing. You find people complaining about overshadowing, but in fact, often overshadowing doesn't reach the extent of a fence shadow. So, the fence is there because if it wasn't, we'd be told that it should be there by the regulations anyway. So,
yeah, thanks, GM. I'm not proposing that there's not a fence there. I'm asking if there'd been consideration given to the shading, and there has been through Katrina's answer that there has been, and that there isn't, that the architect has deemed that there's not concerns about overshading. Is that correct?
Yeah, also just to further add, Unit 1 also has open space in the front area. Units 2 and 4 also have that additional open space in the front area that they can use, also opposite a park. So there's ample open spaces that they can use there and gain sunlight.
Thank you.
Okay, now, James, did you want to come and speak for 5 minutes? So James Williams is from Precinct Urban Planning on behalf of the applicant.
So through the chair, councillors and council officers. So My name's James. I'm from Precinct Urban Planning. I'm representing the applicant for this project, Base Up Building. So the applicant here is seeking to construct 4 two-bedroom units on the subject site. So the units are intended primarily to be rented as cheap accommodation units for elderly residents in the Pittsworth area, which is currently lacking in that supply. So the applicant does have a past history of constructing homes and units for use by elderly residents. He's constructed them not only in the Toowoomba region, but in quite a few regions around the area. He's constructing one up at Kingaroy at the moment, for example. So, so as Katrina did mention before, the site is obviously within the community facilities zone, but when considering the overall intent for the surrounding area, it is considered appropriate to look at it as though it's zoned for low, medium density residential, which in Toowoomba planning scheme sense is essentially looking for high density residential development. So whilst the homes can be considered quite small, they have been designed particularly to minimise the required maintenance given their intention for elderly residents. So you'll notice that the private open space areas are located out the front, which assists in the applicant maintaining the sites and reducing the access that they need to help the elderly residents maintain any landscaping that is proposed. So obviously one of the benefits that the applicant found with this site is the proximity to services. So they've got the Grand Street Park opposite the road. It's also very short walking distance with footpaths and connections to the IGA and the community facilities within town. So with elderly residents, the applicant tries to look for this proximity to services to ensure that, to minimise how much driving they would need to do. And for example, elderly residents, they're generally one-car households as well. The applicant's found on previous developments that he's done, generally 9 times out of 10, the residents will most likely have one car. However, under the planning scheme, we have made provision for 2 parking spaces for each unit, which is the requirement. In this instance as well, the requirement under the planning scheme is for 1 visitor parking. However, due to the widths of the street and the low traffic volumes that travel up and down Grand and Forest Streets there, the applicant's traffic engineers have determined that on-street parking for visitors would be suitable in this instance. One reason as well for this too is that if you're able to pull up this site plan. So with the site plan there, you'll notice that there's obviously the 3 units fronting Grand Street down the bottom, 1 unit fronting Forest Street there. We have had previous discussions after public notification and during further advice stage with council's planning and engineering officers to determine whether an on-site park could be located. There was one position that was identified which was adjacent to Unit 1. However, when considering the intentions for the development being for elderly residents, the engineers decided that it'd be better for safety and for accessibility to provide the on-street car parking, as it minimises the walking distance, as it wouldn't make much sense to park in Unit 1 and then walk all the way around to Unit 4, for example. Now, with the use of the site for elderly residents, given that they generally only do have 1 vehicle per household, that also frees up the driveway parking for any visitors where possible. So there were considerations to include the on-site park. However, it was found that it would be more practical and reasonable to provide that on-street car parking for the applicants, and it also means that we can provide additional landscaping to assist in the amenity of the area. So the applicant has also, to touch on a couple of the issues brought up before as well, with the site coverage of 55.2%, the applicant has done quite detailed storm modelling for this site. Council's engineers did identify that there were potential issues upstream due to Council's network not currently being able to cater for upstream impacts. So as a result of that, the applicant has been willing to go above the requirements within the planning scheme and include on-site detention on the site in the form of a water tank. So that water tank will be located adjacent to Unit 1, and it'll primarily be reserved for detaining stormwater to minimise the amount of stormwater entering into council's stormwater network. So this is deemed to improve the stormwater quantity issues that were raised by council. It is also worth considering as well that being a community, the land being zoned for community facilities use as well, when the engineers would consider a standard requirement for that for the engineering, you'd be looking at a quite higher site coverage for something like that, and therefore greater stormwater demand. So this actually reduces what would be typical of something within that zoning.
Now, James, you're just about running out of time, but if councillors have specific questions they'd like to ask of James. Councillor McDonald?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to James. James, great that it's a local builder, first and foremost, who would have knowledge of our planning scheme, but also about the expectation of an aesthetically appealing build on the site. The question is around the commentary that it's for elderly people, and from a sale perspective, will it be marketed that way, or will they have some sort of covenancy over it that is particularly for elderly people?
I don't know if they can put a covenancy or anything over it, but it will be marketed towards elderly residents, yes.
So it's really governed by the market demand of what will be in that, well, it depends who's after that product.
Yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
yeah.
So although it may be designed for elderly, and I guess then it may have some facilities for people with walking, ability issues and that sort of thing. So in that case, it would probably lend itself to that product. But I was just interested to know how it would be marketed. But if it's marketed to that particular target, then perhaps that's the only way it could possibly be done.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, it will be marketed towards elderly residents. There are features within the house that will be incorporated, such as accessibility for walkers and wheelchairs, and I believe there's going to be stuff within the bathrooms and all that sort of stuff to help with accessibility too. So it does try and promote that elderly use. Yep.
James, can I ask whether there's an intention to sell them individually?
I don't believe so. I believe he's going to market them all together or rent them out individually as one premises.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We are up to someone moving that we reinstate standing orders. Councillor Summerfield, Councillor McDonald, all those in favour? Okay, so the recommendation, councillors, is that the council approve the application pursuant to the provisions of Section 60 of the Planning Act 2016, subject to the conditions listed in the report. Can I have someone move that recommendation? And Councillor Carl, seconded by Councillor McMahon. Would anyone like to go into debate? No. All those in favour? Carried. Did you want? Carried unanimously. Okay. You're voting against. Sorry, Councillor Antonio. Okay. Thank you. That's meeting closed at 2:55.